Enhanced interrogation techniques, a sugarcoating term for torture, was used by the CIA to describe their methods in one of the most horrifying and deadliest secret operations of the Vietnam War. Deep in the Vietnamese jungles, far from the public eye's spotlight, one of the most controversial programs in American military history unfolded. This operation, known as the Phoenix Program, shows us the lengths some will go in the name of war. Through this story, we uncover the darker side of the conflict, bringing to light the tactics and methods that defined this controversial mission. As we delve deeper into the Phoenix Program, we uncover a world where the usual rules of war didn't apply. Be prepared to hear some unsettling truths and the methods employed in this operation, which were extreme and often terrifying in their intensity and brutality. From chilling techniques of torture to the ruthless strategies of psychological warfare, what you're about to hear may be harrowing. Viewer discretion is advised, as the details we are about to explore may be distressing. The Phoenix Program began in 1967 as a response to the need for a more effective counter against the Viet Cong. The Viet Cong was the heart of resistance against the American and South Vietnamese forces, and their ability to blend in with civilians was their greatest advantage. The Phoenix Program was born out of desperation, aiming to root out this elusive force using a combination of military, intelligence, and psychological operations. At the heart of the program was the identification and neutralization of Viet Cong's political leaders and key members. But how do you identify an enemy without a face? The answer lay in intelligence work. American and South Vietnamese forces developed a sophisticated network of espionage using informants, wiretapping, and covert operations. Information on suspicious individuals was gathered daily, who were then put on watch or capture lists. However, the real controversy lies in the methods used after capture. The interrogation of prisoners became the core of the program, often crossing the boundaries of legality and morality. Confessions were extracted through various forms of pressure, including torture. Allegations of brutality and human rights violations became the main topic of criticism of this program. The Phoenix Program had two main parts: the Provincial Reconnaissance Units, PRUs, and the Regional Interrogation Centers. The PRUs were responsible for capturing or killing people suspected of being part of the Viet Cong, including civilians who might know about VC actions. They functioned as the Special Operations Fire Brigade, capable of operating in areas where regular military forces could not venture. Many of these individuals were then taken to interrogation centers, where they often faced torture to get information about VC activities in the region. The information gathered at these centers was then used by military leaders to direct the PRUs to do more missions to capture or kill. The success of the program was judged by how many VC members were neutralized, which is a word used to mean either imprisoned, convinced to change sides, or killed. In the Phoenix Program, American and Vietnamese forces worked closely together in a joint effort. The Americans, primarily from the CIA, provided strategic guidance, training, and support, while the Vietnamese personnel were integral to the operation's execution. They served as soldiers, interrogators, and analysts, playing key roles in identifying and neutralizing suspected communist operatives. On the ground, American advisors often accompanied Vietnamese teams on their missions, offering expertise and tactical support. Together, they conducted operations in villages across South Vietnam, aiming to dismantle the Viet Cong's underground network. They were recruited, trained, equipped, and dispatched into the shadows to cover extensive ground and inflict maximum damage on short notice. Their operations remain among the least known aspects of the Vietnam War. This obscurity also means that a significant portion of their losses are still classified as missing in action to this day. Very few of those captured or killed during operations were ever rescued or recovered. The operators themselves were well aware that their missions were of the most dangerous kind, understanding that many would not return. Stealth and carrying light loads were essential for fulfilling their missions and for making a quick escape if they were compromised. Point men or entire teams often used AK-47s to create confusion among enemy troops during return fire, and this also allowed them to use captured ammunition when necessary. The choice of individual uniforms and gear often fell to the team leader or the soldiers themselves. Inside enemy territory, wearing black pajamas, which were typically worn by the Viet Cong, served a strategic purpose. If operatives were in an enemy-controlled area dressed in black pajamas, they wouldn't be immediately identified as Americans by the enemy. This disguise, if they encountered the enemy at the same time, gave them the advantage of surprise. They knew that anyone they saw in such situations was a target, providing them a slight edge in combat. The most tragic aspect of this program was that often the targets were ordinary civilians. Peasants, teachers, and even children found themselves in the clutches of this machine, accused without evidence or based on dubious information. The military and intelligence apparatus made no distinction between a real enemy and an innocent peasant. There are numerous stories of innocent victims disappearing in dark interrogation rooms. One Vietnamese woman described her experience in one of these camps. At the time of my arrest, I was serving on the Education Committee for the National Liberation Front in Long An. During my torture, they used electric shocks. Initially, they attached a peg to my ear, then to my lower lip, followed by my tongue and nipples. They used a device resembling a telephone set, which had a gauge marked from 1 to 9. As they turned it from 1 to 8, I remained conscious, but when they increased the device to level 9, we would lose consciousness. Our fingers swelled up like bananas, to the point where we couldn't close them. Then, they resorted to using a pair of pincers to extract our nails, one at a time. The experience was excruciatingly painful and terrible. It took 10 years for my nails to grow back. Still, I told them nothing. The other woman recalled her experience in the interrogation center. I was put in a helicopter and transported to the interrogation center, where I encountered 2 Americans and 1 Vietnamese. Despite not being a member of the Viet Cong and knowing nothing, being just a woman, they subjected me to brutal treatment. They forced soapy water down my throat until I felt like I was drowning. Then, they prodded me with a dagger and kicked me on both sides of my ribs. The beating was so severe that it left me unable to have children. The Phoenix program did not limit itself to just interrogations and captures. It was a complex system that included propaganda campaigns, psychological operations, and even political assassinations. The tactics were diverse, from spreading disinformation within the Viet Cong to setting up false communications to sow discord among the enemy. American and South Vietnamese forces used every tool available to create division and fear among the Viet Cong members. Although the program's goal was to destroy the enemy's infrastructure, the consequences on the local population were devastating. Peasants who just wanted to live their lives became collateral damage in this espionage war. Fear and distrust permeated everyday life. Suspicion was enough to mark you as a target, and sometimes personal grudges and local disputes led to false accusations. Families were torn apart, and peasants lived in constant fear of being the next target. The Phoenix program did not remain hidden from the international community. Reports of torture, forced disappearances, and extrajudicial killings led to international condemnation. Human rights activists, journalists, and even some politicians in the United States began to publicly denounce the program. These reports helped shape public opinion against the Vietnam War, contributing to the growing anti-war movement within the U.S. The Phoenix program remains one of the most controversial aspects of the Vietnam War. It represents a dark page in the history of military and intelligence operations, a reminder of how far war can go in the name of higher goals. Although officially ended with the withdrawal of American forces from Vietnam, its consequences still resonate. The Phoenix program is not just a story of war, it's a story about humanity, ethics, and the consequences that come with the decision to use any means to achieve objectives.